I can't go fishing, but I can answer all your fly fishing questions that you posted right now. So let's go. What's your leader setup for Euro Nymphing? This is including the colored sections down to your tippet. I've mainly been using 2 different leader setups, and it depends on the regulations of the region that I'm in. So the Taupo region, I use a Euro Nymph GST fly line, and to that I splice about 10 foot of bicolor indicator material. From that 10 foot, I then go 3 to 5 foot of 4x tippet material to the first fly or the dropper, and then to the point fly I'll go another foot. That's it, very simple, I don't make it difficult. And for the fish and game region, I use a saltwater tapered leader that my friend Angel showed me. It's actually 15 meters long, but I cut it down to about 12 meters. And then from there I tie my tippet setup, so it will be 3 to 5 foot of 4x and then another foot to the point fly. So all I need to do is use some neon Scaphar's wax to just brighten up the sighter part, just because the red is a bit dull of the saltwater tapered leader, so it brightens it up. What sort of leader setup do you run for saltwater fly fishing? So I keep my saltwater fly fishing setup really simple. I generally just use a 9-foot section of 15 to 20 pound fluorocarbon. And to loop that to my fly line, I simply make a bimini twist in it. That's probably the best loop that you can make, and it gives it a little bit of shock absorbance. If I wanted to go a bit extra, I will make a handful leader of about 3 foot and then loop that bimini twist tippet section to that, and then the full leader to the fly line. That gives you a lot of shock absorbance, and works really well for things like kingfish and stuff like that. So I don't use it that often, but sometimes I'll make a full leader at the start of my fishing season and just leave that on my fly line for the rest of the season and replace that at the end. And then every time all I need to do is just loop my 20 pound fluoro tippet to it of 9 foot. So it works really well. When saltwater fly fishing, what do you look for? How do you get an idea there might be fish around? So I look for structure and current or surface activity. Rocky reefs, oysters, kelp with sandy holes in between, with a bit of current flowing, a point and a drop off, kelp to sand drop off when there's a bit of current or a channel flowing. Structure, and there's food. If the food is brought to the fish, that's where they will congregate. So often off points where there's a drop off, there'll be a bit of an upwelling if there's a current running by. It brings food to the surface and the fish congregate there. So that works really quite well. The other thing I really look for is surface activity, turns or shearwaters or gannets diving. Really shows you that there's fish around, or at least bait fish around. And sometimes you actually see the fish before the birds see them. You'll see kahawai splashing on the surface, or kingfish splashing, chasing bait, or you'll see the frothing area on the surface where they're krilling, which is quite cool to see. Have you fished any Hawke's Bay rivers? Yes, I have, but not in the last 10 years or so. It's been a while since I've been there, and hopefully this summer, if I can get a road trip off the ground, I plan to fish some Hawke's Bay rivers, so keep an eye out for that. When fishing egg patterns behind a bomb, are your flies hard on the bottom? Yes, I like the heavy fly to be ticking along the bottom ideally, and then the unweighted egg fly is generally just floating above the bottom, perfectly in the fish's face and where they're going to see it and eat it. Let's hope. That's the plan anyway. With winter run fish, they tend to hug the bottom in schools and the pools or in the tail of the pool, so you really need to get that egg fly in front of them. They won't move very far to grab it. Favorite salt and freshwater flies? Saltwater flies, I have to say, it's the Clouser minnow and a crease fly. Covers your bases. If you have those in a variety of sizes and weights and stuff, you can cover pretty much anything, or at least in New Zealand. Freshwater, it's a royal wolf, flashback pheasant tail, heron copper, and a woolly bugger. Those flies in a few variations of size and weight will basically cover me for an entire season. It's a brilliant bunch of flies, and you can catch any trout with those. What are your favorite 3 saltwater flies to target kahawai with? Here in Auckland, I tend to use a small size 2 to 8 Clouser variation tied with SF blend in blue and white. That works really well. It seems to imitate the anchovies here, so I use that quite a lot. And I also use crease flies on the surface, and on the local reefs we've been using a fly called a Simon's Big Eye, which is just a baitfish pattern sparsely tied with a really big yellow eye, about 8 millimeters. Works really well. What's your favorite fly of all time? That's a gold bead flashback pheasant tail. Fantastic fly. Caught so many fish with it. Biggest brown and rainbow trout? Well, I haven't been weighing or measuring fish very much recently, so I don't really know, but in the past my biggest one that I weighed in a brown trout was 8.5 pounds. And the one I'm showing you now I caught recently. It wasn't weighed, but it was a pretty nice fish. very happy with it, and yeah, I'll never know the weight. The same with my rainbow trout. The heaviest rainbow I've weighed has been 7 pounds, but I've definitely caught bigger, or I'm pretty sure I've caught bigger, although it wasn't weighed, like this one that I'm showing you now. I didn't weigh that, but you know, it could have been 8.5 pounds, who knows. We'll never really know without weighing it. But yeah, it was a pretty big fish and I was very happy with it. Saying that, I'm pretty sure I've never caught a trout over 10 pounds. Hopefully I will one day, but again, I probably won't weigh it or measure it, so I probably won't know. But I'll know it's a big fish, because a 10-pound fish is a big fish. So let's hope my day will come soon. What is the most trout that you have caught in a day? Again, I don't really keep count, but with the benefit of video, there is always hindsight. So I had a really good day a while back on a small stream, and I counted the fish caught in that video, and that was 19 from memory. So that was a really good day for me. I was very happy, and I don't think I've often caught more than that. In fact, in about 20 years of fly fishing, I don't think I've ever caught more than 30 fish in a day. So I don't know what I do if I do catch that many fish. What are some good techniques for fishing very small streams that have large amounts of vegetation on the banks, for example willows? Well, I love fishing streams like that, and the first thing I do is I actually get into the stream. I know it's not ideal to be in the water with a fish, but with overgrown banks you really can't move around if you're not in the stream. And what that does as well is it allows you to use the stream to do your cast. So what I would do is I would drop back my line and flick it back downstream, let the water load and let the current take it, and then flick it upstream. I generally fish dry dropper, so that works really well. Just water loading and flicking it up. Another one that's ideal is roll cast, so I often actually overline my rod so it will really load up close, so I can flick it out under the trees and stuff. So roll casts are really good. Side casting is also a really good option. You can just side cast parallel to the water and get it in underneath branches and stuff. If it's just high banks and you've just got grass and stuff behind you, a steeple cast works quite well. You can get that out. Really tight quarters, bow and arrow is another way to go. Or one of the things I really like about small streams like that, if it's a lot of pocket water, I just have just the leader out essentially and high stick it, dry dropper into the pockets, one there, one here, each pocket, and just test them out like that, and often pick up a lot of fish that way, even very close quarters. Question about nymphing line maintenance. What technique do you use to bunch or hold line in your hand when putting in line? So I guess this can apply both to Euro nymphing and to in nymphing with an indicator if you are trying to manage your line and pulling in line after you cast to manage the line on the water, whether it be to keep contact with the Euro nymphing setup or remove some of the slack and mending while you are nymphing with an indicator. One of the keys to that is to just have the right amount of line out. Don't go and strip a whole bunch of line off your reel, then cast, and then there's still a bunch of line left on the water after you've cast. That line should go out right to your reel when you cast, so that when you start, you're starting from the reel and then using the minimum amount of line, bringing it back, staying in contact, or maintaining your drift when you are indicator nymphing. So yeah, make sure that you have the minimum amount of line out. That's the key. Then you can just drop it in the water next to you. In your last video, you said that Euro nymphing had changed your fly fishing forever. In what way? Are you going to be fishing Euro style all the time? Is it now your preferred method? Okay, so let's break that down. In what way has it changed my fly fishing forever? Well, I have another technique that's very effective that I've added to my arsenal that I can use when that technique is the best thing to use. I guess that's the key for me. I pick the technique that is best for the situation and the river and the place I'm going to fish, and that's the technique I will fish. My preferred method, if I get to choose, is sight fishing dry dropper, and it will always be, I love that take if it comes on the dry or on the nymph. It's visual. You either see the fish swinging out and grabbing the fly with the mouth flashing open, or they come up for that dry. Sight fishing is the ultimate thing for me. I love it. That's my preferred method. No, I won't fish it all the time, but if I think it's the best method in the situation and the place I am to use it, then that's the method I will fish. That's the way I pick what I'm going to fish with. I've been finding that I really prefer Euro nymphing on medium-sized, slightly deeper rivers that run quite fast, like fast runs and fast pocket water. Rivers that I find that you can easily reach the other side with a Euro nymphing setup. I don't have to excessively wade, and I like the faster, deeper water where I probably wouldn't be fishing with a dry dropper setup, but those fast runs and pocket water, it works really well for that for me. On the bigger rivers, I've used it, but I struggle a little bit. The pools are often deep and slow, and I don't really know how to fish those that effectively. And you have to wade a lot to get into different parts of the river because you just don't have that much reach, I find. So, but I'm only just beginning Euro nymphing, so I guess I will learn more and learn different techniques to use in different situations. On small streams again, I tend to go dry dropper straight away, but apparently fishing dry dropper on a Euro Nymph setup is pretty effective as well, so I might try that this summer too. What's the weight of your backpack? It's heavy. I've got my tripod in there, all my camera gear, water bottle, first aid kit, extra food, all sorts of stuff, extra warm clothes and whatnot. Really, it gets pretty heavy after a long day of fishing on the water. So again, like the fish, I didn't weigh it, so I don't know what it actually weighs, but it's heavy. Can you please post your Euro Nymph setup, your equipment like Euro Nymph, dry fly, what rods you prefer and what fly lines do you generally use? So I'm just going to lump these questions together in a bit of a what gear I use answer. Something I just want to mention here for those that don't know, maybe I'm an ambassador for I Love Fly Fishing, which is a local online fly shop. So I'm very fortunate that I get to use a whole wide range of their gear and test out new things and test out different setups. So I'm almost always fishing with something new and something different. That actually makes it a little bit hard to answer this question because I'm not fishing with the same setup all the time and I'm always changing something up. But saying that, I'm going to answer with the ones that I really prefer to use. So let's start with Euro Nymphing. I use the 10'6" 3-weight Trapper GST rod. With the GST reel, that is a full cage fly reel designed for Euro Nymphing so that the line doesn't escape. And then I have the Trapper Euro Nymph fly line that goes with that. So I use that with the leader setups that I mentioned earlier. So for small streams and medium rivers where I'm dry dropper fishing or nymphing, I like to use the 4-weight V-top rod. It's a fast action 9-foot rod that I pair with the 5-weight perfect taper line from Stone Creek. I often like to fish close quarters and I do a lot of roll casting, and overlining the rod just helps with that and turning over leaders and stuff like that. So I go with that. Then for bigger rivers or windy conditions or when I need to cast heavy flies, I go with a 6-weight V-top with a 7-weight perfect taper line, and that works really well. Again, I overline it for the same reasons, roll casting and also getting out heavy flies and things. So my main consideration for a reel is just having smooth drag. I've been using the DL Green ultralight reel from I Love Fly Fishing quite a bit, and that's been working well for me. The Trapper Creek, all the Trapper reels have got really smooth drag, so that's all good. Yeah, that's my main criteria for reels, is just smooth drag. How and when did you get into fly fishing? What's the story? I think I started fly fishing around the late 90s, and that sort of coincided with my first visit to New Zealand, early 2000s, and then later in 2003 I moved to New Zealand, and once I moved to New Zealand it took over my life pretty much. I started fly fishing all the time and just progressively did more and more. There was a little bit of a spell where I did more saltwater fishing while I was living in Auckland just because it worked for me at the time. I spent about 4.5 years overseas, 3.5 years of which was in South Korea, where I fly fished for all sorts of strange fish, from sea bass to introduced largemouth bass to predatory carp to kuri, which is a weird native predatory fish, and all sorts of cool things in between. It was really nice, some interesting fishing there. Then came back to New Zealand in 2016 and got back into saltwater fly fishing big time when I was back in Auckland for a while. But slowly the trout took over again, and for the last probably 2 years I've been really just trout fishing mainly and doing a little bit of saltwater fly fishing as well, but not so much. So yeah, that's pretty much how I started my fly fishing journey. It's been a long one. So I hope I've answered everyone's questions. Thanks very much for the response. Thanks very much for watching, and I'm really sorry I can't bring you any fishing content now. We are in lockdown and I am stuck. Can't go fishing. I'm in Auckland, unfortunately. The rest of the country is madly fishing and I'm very jealous, but I hope they enjoy their fishing very much, and I will bring you some new content as soon as I can. So watch this space, and thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.